Hello and welcome back to Continental Club, where we discuss the hottest topics in European football. Today we're discussing the potential fallen giant of Zinedine Zidane, but I've brought down two giants of the FD office who are keeping their status in Patrick Van Straten and Chris Hamill. Welcome aboard. Let's dive straight in, because Monstrous Messi has asked, who will be the first elite manager to get sacked? And that leads us on quite nicely to the events of this week. But before we get into it, please remember to subscribe to Eurofootball Daily and hit that notification bell to never miss a video. But it really feels like a sort of monumental month for Zinedine Zidane following that 3-0 humbling in Paris. This Sunday they travel to early table toppers Sevilla, they then play Osasuna, and then they play Atletico Madrid. And there is a high chance that the Frenchman could be out of a job by the first El Clasico of the season on the 27th of October. Gentlemen, he only has a 43.8% winning percentage since resuming his position in March. That's nearly 10% lower than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer since he took over in December. Obviously, he had that great period up to March, but it's still very surprising, I thought. But let's begin with the game on Wednesday, Pat, because it was not a good performance on any level.
No, I mean, PSG just rolled them over. Like Real Madrid never really had a foothold in the game, and to be honest, I think that's inevitable given the state of their midfield, which actually is I'd say a larger issue with Zidane, which we probably need to get into. But even though shots were relatively evenly split, I think it was 10-9, and possession was quite even as well, 53-47. PSG had 5 shots on target and Real Madrid had none. I think it was the first time in 15 years in the Champions League that they had not put a shot on target. And I think overall, wasn't the record, it was like 500 and something games.
I think it's 167 games.
No, but that's in the Champions League.
Oh, I see.
In all competitions, I think they've gone over 500 games
goodness, okay,
since the last time they went without getting a shot on target. And generally speaking, like, you can't even say that they were kind of unlucky. Like, I think expected goals ended up 2 to 0.7, but it was just really hard to remember instances of Real Madrid getting the ball in the attacking third. In fact, the most memorable one was the one that Gareth Bale, knocked in after juggling it with his hand, which was rightly disallowed, obviously. I just thought that they had a total lack of intensity, and they had a lack of what they've had in the previous years, which was individual quality to bail them out. So in the past, their defence wasn't good either under Zidane. It was never particularly coherent. But when somebody got through, the idea was either Casemiro or Sergio Ramos will be there, and they will just see ball and get ball. And that actually works kind of well, because Sergio Ramos is great at that, but it can't last forever. And they don't have a system to make up for it. Whereas PSG, in the absence of Cavani, in the absence of Mbappe and Neymar, they were missing more important players than Real were. In the absence of all those players, they just looked like a team. They worked really well together. And actually, it was kind of the unglamorous players who really shone on the day. I mean, Juan Bernat, I thought, was absolutely fantastic from left back, was able just to get forward pretty much at will. And obviously, I think we all were impressed by Idrissa Gueye, who for years we've said is an underrated player, and he proved it.
What an absolute king.
Yeah.
What a monstrous performance from him. I was actually purring over it in the pub. I just couldn't believe my eyes. He was devouring everything, wasn't he? Only 4 tackles, which is somewhat surprising. I think he attempted 8. It's probably why it kind of threw me off. 3 clearances as well, 3 chances created, which I believe was the highest on the pitch. He was very influential. Yes. He grabbed an assist, didn't he? Wasn't not just in the build-up to Di Maria's goal. Winning the ball back just in key areas. And I was surprised by his passing more so than anything. His first time passing, the variety of sort of passes he was deploying, because we've come to expect really high defensive numbers from him, but he looked far more cultured than I'd ever given him credit for in this game, and he was the standout midfielder. And at 28, 29, it's nice to kind of see him enjoy it like an Indian summer in his career. Personally, Real Madrid, like Pat said, the defence has not been great for quite some time. I think they're still conceding 8.5 shots in the league this season, which is like 4th, 5th best, so Champions League-ish at the moment, while still taking around 20 shots. And Benzema's had an incredible start to the season. Vinicius is always very handy when he comes on. Eden Hazard, not sleeping in this game, that's harsh, because I still think he completed around 4 dribbles maybe, but just largely ineffective. And I think system just triumphed in this game, didn't it? PSG's press, you saw it with players like Sarabia, players like Bernat, this kind of profile of player that's starting to seep into the club now, that Tuchel's probably been after for a little while. He's been kind of honing the system and been waiting for players like this. We're starting to see, even in the absence of superstars, PSG just beating out teams packed with them just by knowing what to do and having a clearer philosophy. There's still an element of kind of like pragmatism with Real Madrid. Yes, they're going for a bit of an injury crisis, aren't they? In the centre of midfield, they let, who's it, Valverde go?
No, Valverde's injured.
Sorry, Llorente go to Atletico Madrid. Valverde's injured. James is come straight back into central midfield. Ceballos has obviously gone out on loan, which is looking obscure now. Kovacic obviously parted ways with him. Like that midfield, they could have effectively built a better midfield three with the players they let go, which suggests either Zidane, I don't know, is maybe not fully in control of transfers, or there's not a lot of joined up thinking with him and the board. I just don't know what's going on at Real Madrid at current, but they need another transfer window.
Definitely, and it seems, I agree with you, it seems like there's a bit of a disparity between what Perez wants and what Zidane wants. I don't think the Madrid fans were delighted that they let go of Llorente, who's the great nephew, I think, of a Real Madrid great in Gento. And then he, targeted Paul Pogba all summer long. Man United made it clear that they didn't want to sell at any price. Should have moved on to other targets in that midfield. Didn't, and then sold a lot of resources that could have done a very good job for Real Madrid this year. And I'm not sure that Donny van de Beek or Christian Eriksen are actually what they need in that midfield. They probably need someone more like an N'Golo Kante, who, if I was Real Madrid, that's who I'd really go for next year, because I think he would make all the difference in that midfield alongside Casemiro. And then you could play someone like Kroos, whose creativity is still fantastic, but as we've sort of discussed on numerous shows now, it just doesn't really have the legs anymore to last in a midfield three. And also, big issues at the back, not just in their defence, but Courtois, I think, is actually a problem now. Hasn't kept a clean sheet since February. £36 million last year, just hasn't worked out. I don't know why they got rid of Keylor Navas. I think sometimes you need to accept that you're wrong. I know that they targeted Courtois for quite a while alongside De Gea, very much as the second choice, but that just move hasn't worked out at all. And I don't think Carvajal's played as well in the last 2 years. I think he's got 8 assists in his last 60 League and Champions League games, which is about half that of Trent Alexander-Arnold and a further 10 behind Kimmich. So in terms of the world best right-backs that we used to talk, and Carvajal was very much in that discussion.
But that's less of an issue than his defensive decline, right? There are different profiles of players, and he's never been an incredible creative right-back.
But his tackles and interceptions have also nearly
that's a bigger issue to me. In that sense, Fillon Mendy should help, and I thought Fillon Mendy kind of did an admirable job. He was the only defender who wasn't embarrassment in this game. But to me, the worst player on the pitch was Toni Kroos. He is a liability at this point, and I thought that he simply cannot cover ground. He cannot defend, and all he does is distribute. And don't get me wrong, his distribution's pretty good, but most of his creative play comes from set pieces. And I feel like they've got other guys in the squad who can do it. When Zidane went back, we kind of said, oh well, in order to go back, Zidane must have negotiated more say in transfers. But I think he's just maybe not very good at transfers. The fact that he not only thought his midfield. He clearly didn't prioritise midfield reinforcements, and not only that, he was willing to weaken his midfield by selling a bunch of guys. Even if as a Real Madrid fan, you don't think those guys are good enough to be starters for Real Madrid, clearly good enough to be squad players, Ceballos, Kovacic, Llorente, and instead they've just got nobody. It's better to have somebody than nobody, even if that guy isn't your dream player. I just look at them at the moment and I think, I don't know really what solves this, because I don't know, unless Valverde ends up being incredible, what is the solution to the midfield issue? Genuinely, what is it? They're going to have to do what Spurs did last season, where they essentially played without a midfield. But Pochettino's a much cleverer manager than Zidane. And I don't know, it's just really troubling. Because as much as we can talk about PSG having a better system than Real, and they are more organised, and they clearly had a better game plan on the night, they also have more talent, spread across the pitch. Real Madrid have loads of talent in particular areas, but not much in what I'd say is the most important area on the field, which is central midfield.
Yeah, I do have some sympathy with Zidane in terms of, he's inherited a squad that was in need of a massive turnover. They've done the first stage of it this summer. I think Hazard, Jovic, Mendy will improve them, and Rodrigo's obviously got a lot of potential as well. But then he's not using Jovic in the slightest. I know Benzema's been in good form, but one start for Jovic so far, got taken off after 68 minutes for Modric. Not that promising. And then Militao looked pretty just not really up to standard on Wednesday. I don't want to rule him out just yet, but there's definite question marks. And then he also clearly wanted to get rid of Gareth Bale. That didn't happen. He clearly wanted to get rid of James Rodriguez. And now these are key men in his starting lineup. So you can't judge the internals, but it doesn't seem like a smooth flowing machine.
It's his fault.
Yeah, he doesn't seem like he's evolved as a manager either, does it? In 17-18, 44 goals conceded, and then last season it was 46. And whilst last season, is not his fault, he's not really identified a defence as a priority, or even midfield reinforcements either. And yeah, it's kind of making the summer, wherein they spent a record amount, seem a little bit more bizarre in retrospect. A lot of fans want Jose Mourinho back. Of course, when Solari left, there was kind of chanting for him outside the stadium. Of course, in his 3-year period there, he was extremely successful. Was it one Copa del Rey, one League, one? Was it the other cup? I think he won 3. I think he won 3 trophies there.
I think it was 3 Champions League semi-finals.
Yeah,
and they were up against an incredible Barcelona side.
3 consecutive semis. Yeah, I think he had a win percentage of around 75% there, which was like the highest in his career. And that was when they were a very well-rounded proposition. So you can see why Real Madrid fans would look fondly, or maybe through rose-tinted glasses, about Jose Mourinho's period and the possibility of him coming back in. I certainly think he resolves the defence, but yeah, the midfield kind of issue remains, doesn't it?
I don't know. I mean, Man United's defence was appalling, the last couple of seasons under him, and he did bring in players that he wanted. I don't know. I'm not sure that anybody can really solve this team at the moment without maybe using Militao, who has played at DM before, in midfield. I genuinely think they're going to have to do something like that, because I just don't see how they do it. And they've been appalling. I understand what you're saying about Courtois, and to be honest, I've never been a fan of Courtois, but I think it's a bit weird to blame him, given that the defence is just dreadful. So far this season, they haven't conceded lots of shots, but they've conceded the highest quality shots in the league, because they're only allowing something, I think it's 8.5 shots a game.
It's the fourth worst by expected goals.
Yeah, the fourth worst by expected goals. So that tells you how high the quality of shot is. And it just means that they beat Celta Vigo 3-1 on the opening day of the season, gave up tons of chances, could easily have drawn or lost. And they've done that pretty much every week since. And look, when you say, okay, this is the first stage in an overall turnover, well, firstly, Zidane could have started that turnover earlier when he was originally manager, and he was the one who said, we're not going to sign anyone this summer, and everyone said, what a masterstroke, which doesn't really make sense to me. He could have got Kante for 30 mil at the time. And it's also about prioritising moves. So Eden Hazard for 100 mil, okay, fair enough, though you could also argue Vinicius was excellent there last season. But going and get Ferland Mendy, I love Ferland Mendy, but you do have Marcelo, you have Reguilon, and you have Hakimi, who you could have recalled. But instead, they let Hakimi stay at Dortmund. They loaned Reguilon out to Sevilla. And now they've got Mendy, and I love Mendy, but is that really where they should have been investing their money, given the strength they have at that position relative to their strength in midfield? It's just not sensible at all. And what it just basically suggests to me is that Zidane, who has never been a great manager, is also not great at building a squad.
Yeah, and there's going to be plenty of, his main strength is man management, and you're already hearing whispers of, a bit of discontent coming from that dressing room, although there's always whispers of discontent coming from a Real Madrid dressing room, so I won't take that too seriously. But we need to talk about, do we think he'll be fired? Do we think he'll be removed? And if so, who is potentially coming in? So, Chris, you've talked about Jose Mourinho, but Max Allegri is also available. Could you foresee that happening?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and it would be an interesting appointment, wouldn't it? And their attack is still good, it's still proficient enough that he can come in, probably sacrifice 3 or 4 shots a game, maybe put an extra man in midfield to shore up that defence, and they would be okay. But that would represent quite the system change. That wouldn't necessarily represent the brand of football that they've always championed, would it? That Allegri kind of deployed at Juventus, although it's a winning brand, and I'm sure that the Real Madrid would just take winning at the moment. There's some interesting candidates still available, I suppose. Even people that have been let go in Spain, like Setien, obviously played attacking football at Real Betis. Pablo Machín had a very good 6 months at Sevilla, so if you're looking at capable hands to sort of guide you through a tumultuous period before you devise a long-term plan, maybe someone like Marcelino as well, who's just been let go pretty inexplicably by Valencia. they might be okay, but I don't see them making any decisions before the Champions League group games are maybe done, to be perfectly honest, because that tends to be where Zidane redeems himself. And if they can pick up a bit of momentum, go through second after PSG, then we'll see what happens, like I said, in January. I'm not too close to Real Madrid and Spanish football at the start of this season, so it's a difficult one. Maybe the guys in the comments have got some more insight.
Yeah, I mean, they've definitely got a big ask. I mean, they struggled last year against CSK Moscow. I think they lost both of their games against them. So if they slip up again against Club Brugge or Galatasaray, serious issues. But Pat, one of the names manager-wise who's always been linked with Real Madrid over the last couple of years is Pochettino. Could you foresee a situation where Pochettino says, "Thank you very much, Spurs. I've had a great time. I want to go to Real Madrid"?
Possibly, but I don't think it's going to happen mid-season. Like, I'm sure that Real Madrid, given this start to the year, I'm sure they're thinking about what is going to happen next year. And even if they keep it down to the end of the season, I think that they will probably make a play for somebody in the summer. And their first choices, according to very persistent rumours, have been Pochettino and Klopp for some time. I think they're more likely to get Poch than Klopp. But it's kind of difficult to say. I think next season, PSG are going to be looking for a manager, I would have thought. And Pochettino would improve them immediately, but fundamentally, Pochettino's going to demand a lot of say over transfers. And they're going to need to give him that, or they're going to need to give somebody that in order to safeguard the future of the side. I'm actually quite glad that I really want Real Madrid to have like a genuinely dreadful season after spending all this money, because they need to realise that they're really, really bad at doing this. Like, they need to realise that they need an intelligent director of football who can actually build a style. Because Zidane, everyone talks about how Real Madrid want to play attacking football, but they haven't really had attacking coaches. I mean, like, Mourinho was not an attacking coach, but actually produced quite an attacking side. Ancelotti was an attacking coach, but Zidane was just practical. Zidane changed system constantly. He changed system every season. They never had the same system from season to season. And he pretty much just got away with whatever he could for as long as... It reminded me of Wenger in that sense. Like, it was just kind of like, nothing's working, keep trying things till something works, then stick with that till that stops working, then try and find something else. They do need somebody to come in with a firm hand and recruit players for a specific system. And that should be a director of football rather than a manager. So, to me, the future of Real Madrid is much more dependent on the quality of person who's building the squad than the quality of person who happens to be manager next year. However, if I were them, I would make the biggest play I possibly could for Poch, because I think he's the best manager they could get hold of. And regardless of what I've said there, I do think that I think Pochettino would make more sense for the kind of team they want to be and actually the talent they have than Allegri.
Yeah, I'd actually be surprised if Zidane made it to Christmas, personally. I think this result will send shockwaves around Real Madrid. They were completely outclassed, and Solari, for all his faults, was fired pretty unceremoniously after one bad result against Ajax, and they'd done pretty well up to then, and particularly in the league, he'd really steadied the ship. So if Solari is going to be fired after that, I think Zidane's job is very much under pressure. But yeah, that's our roundup of where we think Real Madrid are and where they could go. Let's get into big match preview. Our big match preview this weekend is Leone versus PSG, which takes place at 8 p.m. on Sunday. It is a massive game for Leone. They haven't won any of their last 4 games, 3 draws and 1 loss, including their midweek tie against Zenit St. Petersburg in the Champions League, which they drew 1-1, thanks to a Memphis Depay goal. They currently sit 8th. They're already 4 points behind champions PSG, and they really, really don't want to go 7 points behind before the end of September. So, massive game for Leone, Chris.
Yeah, their recent form hasn't been great, has it, mate? So, a 1-0 loss to Montpellier, a 1-1 draw with Bordeaux, and a 2-2 draw with Amiens. And they were unfortunate to draw that game with Zenit. Actually, both teams were pretty ineffective in the second half, but Adelaide had a really good chance to score at the end and sort of just put it past the post with the outside of his boot. But, I mean, at least they finished the game with 11 men on the pitch in the Champions League, which has not been the case in Ligue 1. So, Kone got a red card against Montpellier, and Thiago Mendes got 2 yellows against Bordeaux. So they've been a little bit, not unfortunate in that sense, because they brought it upon themselves, but maybe results would have gone a different way had they had, not had the numerical disadvantage, let's say. XG also suggests they've been a little bit unlucky at the start of this campaign as well. So they scored the game against Amiens in particular. There's a big discrepancy there, 1.8 to 0.4 in their favour. And their underlying numbers Okay, I mean, not fantastic. So only 12 shots per game, which is actually 10th in Ligue 1 and down from a league high of 17.7 last term. And some of that is because Moussa Dembele's form has slided, despite Memphis Depay still putting up frightening figures. We'll get onto that in a second. They're also conceding 13 shots a game, which is down, but only ever so slightly from last campaign, from 12.6 to 13, which is why I say okay. In fact, their numbers are below average. Let's have it right. So Moussa Dembele, 5 in 5, but XG suggests he's running very, very hot. Only taking 1.9 shots per game, 0.8 key passes, 0.3 dribbles with a 19% completion rate. And his expected goals has fallen from around 0.8 last term to 0.46 this term. So he's not had the best start to the season despite scoring 5 in 5. So it'll be interesting to see how that manifests. You know, common sense would dictate that that's going to catch up with him, but let's just hope that Silvinho can get his team firing a little bit more, and it can start creating, you know, start getting him on the end of high quality chances again, I guess. I mean, talking of high quality, Memphis Depay's stats have pretty much stayed up here. So 4.5 shots a game, 1.3 key passes, 2 dribbles, and an expected goals and assist value of 0.69 per 90. Aouar also playing out of his skin, 5 games, 1 goal, 2 assists, 2.5 tackles and interceptions a game. We know that he's kind of not defensively minded, but doesn't mind putting in a shift. 1.9 shots and 1.6 key passes. So some key men sort of sustaining form. Moussa Dembele falling away, but I suppose defensively okay. It's quite hard to put your finger on what is really the problem, other than kind of being quite shot shy. So it might just be progressing the ball through midfield, but even then, they've got some really outstanding players, haven't they? Yeah. So let's just hope that Silvinho kind of, you know, things start to click a little bit better.
Definitely. I think considering their loss of players this summer, it's not been a disastrous start, but I'm not sure Denayer and Marcelo at the back is necessarily the best starting partnership. They do have Joachim Andersen as well, but he didn't start in midweek against Zenit. I haven't been following his progress at Leone so far, so I'm not quite sure how well he's doing. But Thiago Mendes has come in there, and we said that he was going to be more defensively minded than Ndombele, but actually he's already provided 3 assists. But again, he's got quite lucky. I think he's only expected to have 1 assist. So we'll see how that sort of materialises.
Yeah, which is good because they've got Toussaint. Toussaint puts up a lot of the defensive numbers, and Ndombele was pretty much their chief progressor through midfield, wasn't he? So Thiago Mendes was probably always going to have to adapt his game. And it's good that he's done that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. We'll be monitoring him throughout the year. But they come up against a PSG side, Pat, who we've already talked about. Fantastic in the Champions League, but really good in the league as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you ask the average person who doesn't really take much interest in Ligue 1, then they'd probably think PSG haven't been great because of that result against Rennes. Where obviously they lost 2-1 and genuinely deserved to lose 2-1. But despite all the injuries, they've really bounced back well from that. I think since that game they've played for 1-4, scored 10, conceded 0. And generally speaking, they've conceded 3 expected goals across 5 games in Ligue 1, which is unbelievable. And it's no surprise given that they've gone from conceding about 10.5 shots a game to conceding 6. Like this
it's like Manchester City levels, isn't it?
Well, it's better than Manchester City levels.
Yeah.
I mean, Manchester City, I don't think have got quite that low. And I guess it's impressive, especially given that they didn't really upgrade their fullbacks. Obviously, they added some destroyers in midfield, but it seems like another year of the system means that even in the absence of their best players, they're able to continue to put up dominant numbers. Shots have gone down a little bit from about 15 to about 14, but that's kind of not a big difference given the quality of chance they create. And it just shows, Choupo-Moting is currently their top scorer, which I think is mostly because guys have been out injured. But the fact that Choupo-Moting can come in and they can provide him with the opportunities to get 4 shots off a game and score 3 goals, that just shows that pretty much anybody who plays in that system, it's a little bit like Origi playing for Liverpool. Like Origi isn't particularly good at anything, but Liverpool's attack is such that whoever's playing in that position is going to get chances. And if they can finish them, they'll score goals. Di Maria has had a fantastic start to the season as well. 4 goals and an assist in the league. Obviously, tremendous in the Champions League, got 2 goals and was really instrumental in that 3rd one as well. But I've been extremely impressed by them so far, and they've got a little bit more depth across the board this season. Like, yes, they haven't upgraded fullbacks, but Diallo is there who can do a little bit of that, and then Gay and Herrera in midfield. That's really exciting, I think, for their prospects as you get into the latter stages of the Champions League. And then Icardi. You know, Icardi's going to be able to deputise for Mbappe, not at the same level, but it's basically like having Icardi has been pretty much like Harry Kane, like in terms of goals per 90 over the course of his career. So imagine having a striker who's like a 0.65 expected goals per game guy on the bench. Like, that's really, really pleasing for them. And guys like Sarabia are starting to come into form too. So I'm quite bullish on PSG. I think they'll win the league at a canter. But I think in the Champions League as well, you'd certainly rate them above Real Madrid and on current form above Juventus as a contender for the tournament.
I'd be really happy for Tuchel if he got to a semi-final in the Champions League.
Yeah,
I'm not
probably.
sure they'll make a final, but fair play to Sarabia. He's come into a bit of form. I thought he was really underrated on Wednesday, actually. And then, they're just a team in fantastic form.
He's kind of the press trigger, isn't it? You know, watching Sarabia, I was just like, this guy, the work he put in in that front line, you can see the appeal and even kind of the benefits of not having a star-studded forward line and someone that is willing to put in those hard yards. And it's going to be really hard to displace him. Yeah, like you, I thought he was a little bit underrated as well.
Yeah, and Icardi, I think he only had one shot, but some of his hold-up play, which I'm not really sort of rated him for in that sense beforehand. He was playing in Di Maria all over the place. I thought he had a very good underrated game anyway. But Leon actually have a great recent record in this game. So they've won 2 of their last 3 meetings. That was 2-1 wins, but they did lose the other game 5-0. But their overall record is still pretty poor in this game. Since the start of 14-15, they've won 3, drawn 2 and lost 5 in their last 10 league games. In that time, they've scored 11 to PSG's 21. So it's going to be a big ask this weekend, but it's time for our quickfire predictions. Chris, what are you thinking? Leon, PSG, Leon at home?
3-1 PSG.
3-1 PSG. Pat?
Yeah, I think 2-0 PSG.
I might go 4-1 PSG. I think it's going to be an absolute humdinger. Look forward to that on Sunday night. Let's just do one quickfire question.
Merciful, thank you.
Yeah, one quickfire question. Which team from Tamas Bahal has looked the most impressive in the Champions League? Just while these guys think of it, shout out Dinamo Zagreb for battering Atalanta. I watched the highlights of that last night before I went home. Thought it was a fantastic performance. Atalanta in their first ever Champions League game, or at least their first ever Champions League game. Sort of a rabbit in the headlights in Zagreb. They were completely outplayed, came more into it in the second half, but fair play Dinamo Zagreb.
You took the words out of my mouth, mate, because that was one of the games I took a bit more of an interest in, just because we loved Atalanta last season, didn't we? And we like Gasperini, Alejandro Gomez and his Peppa Pig captain's armband. There's a lot of things that is likeable about them, apart, from some of the unsavoury behaviour by the fans.
I saw you did a post about one
about Dani Olmo, just because I had my eye on him for a little while, because he's got a really unique story in that he left La Masia at 16, and a lot of top clubs were in for him at the time because he's always been very highly thought of in the Spanish setup, and I think he was just promised first team football from the get-go. Like, he's already made 130 senior appearances for Dinamo Zagreb in all competitions, and the guy's only 21. He's just turned 21. He actually went to the under-21 European Championship with Spain. Got man of the match in the final. Got a goal in the final. I think
was that a nice chip goal?
I think he might have got a goal and 3 assists across the competition, so it was pretty influential. Those figures might be 3 goals, 1 assist. The numbers escape me now, but. He's been kind of growing in stature at Zagreb to the point where Barcelona want him back. Liverpool and Tottenham were talking about summer bids for him. I think Manchester United were pretty heavily interested as well, but he's got a long contract there. Dinamo are in a strong negotiating position, and he's probably going to command a fee if he continues in this manner of like 40 million upwards, which is a rarity in that neck of the woods, isn't it? I think he completed 10 dribbles on the night against Atalanta.
Wow.
10.
What performance.
No assists. I don't think many key passes either, so it was kind of maybe a few second assists. But he was very influential in that game. But it was like, was it Grozic?
Orsic with the hat-trick.
Completely got that wrong, haven't I? Orsic, yeah, really nice hat-trick from him. And Sergio Dest just turning men into dust. As Ajax they won 3-0, didn't they? Who did they play?
Lille.
I've just
a bit lucky though.
Yeah, I've been watching the expected goals is very, very. It's like 1.8 to 1.6, wasn't it? I think Olmo and Zagreb are a good shout.
Two to watch, definitely. Dest and Olmo. Pat, other than PSG, were you particularly impressed with anyone else in the Champions League?
Well, I think everybody was impressed by Salzburg, though obviously it's kind of an easy game at home to Genk. I think that it will be an interesting test for them when we see them play Liverpool and Napoli. I'm genuinely, I think I'll try and watch all of Salzburg's games because they're just super fun and they're going to play their style pretty much whatever happens. Other than that, nobody's been great so far. I mean, City obviously like strolled to a victory away at Shakhtar, which is no easy ride, and they were very, very good. But you know, who cares?
Yeah, I'm pretty disappointed. I put Barcelona as my favourites for the Champions League, and I thought they were comprehensively outplayed by Dortmund. Worrying times.
And Olympiacos were good actually against Spurs. I thought Olympiacos like at least deserved a draw from that game and maybe deserved a win. They certainly didn't deserve to lose. So. I mean, to do that against Spurs, even at home, I think that's a very impressive performance for them.
100%. It's going to be a very fascinating campaign once again. But thank you very much for watching. Let us know what you guys thought of our comments in the comments down below. What should they go and do now, Chris?
Brace themselves for the podcast, because talking of Champions League sides, we kind of did a Champions League B-side in where we explored some of the smaller teams, the more interesting narratives in the competition, and I ran out of time to prepare, but it was still a decent podcast. So please download that on Sunday. The game's gone mad. Is it going to be out soon? Out already?
Yeah, I think it's out already.
Out already? What? Oh, this is Friday, of course. Out at this point. And yeah, go and check out Squad Goals.
Nice. Anything from you, Pat?
No, that's it.
Please go and check out my Unfiltered with Mikel Antonio yesterday. I did the worm. See you guys later. Bye.